Kirpin. Mr. Kirpin, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Very well. You are the president of American Commitment. Is that correct?
That's right.
And what is that?
We're a national free market advocacy group in Washington. We work on basically all the fiscal and economic and regulatory policy issues. But what we do that's different from a lot of these other groups is we do not do original research. So we don't put out 20 and 30-page papers. We try to get the best facts and information and news on these economic issues down to a 200 or 300-word action alert email or a 600-word column. We try to make it really easy for people with busy lives to understand what's happening and to be more active, engaged citizens. So we've got lots of model letters into Congress that you can send off as is or edit, or letters into regulatory agencies. And we try to make it really easy for people who care about the fiscal and economic issues to know what's happening and to do something about it.
Now, you have come out, your organization has come out and said Trump was right to keep his promise to cancel the Obama climate deal, that is the Paris Climate Accord. Why does your group feel that?
Well, I think this is going to end up being one of the most significant accomplishments of President Trump's first term, and it's because he really stood up for the interests of United States citizens, electricity consumers, energy consumers, taxpayers, however you want to think of yourself. This deal was extraordinarily lopsided against the American people. In effect, the rest of the world made no significant commitment to reduce emissions of any kind. The United States, under Barack Obama, made a commitment to dramatically reduce greenhouse gas emissions at the cost of a substantial increase in energy prices. And so we significantly undermined our competitive position internationally by putting tough restrictions on ourselves that no other country agreed to. And then on top of that huge competitive disadvantage that we put on ourselves, we paid for the privilege with a massive what's called the Green Climate Fund that was supposed to be $100 billion per year, that's billion with a B, per year, from developed to developing nations. And a huge amount of that $100 billion certainly would have come from the United States if we had remained in the agreement. And so this was a deal that really took advantage of the United States, that had no environmental benefit of any kind, because the emissions reductions in the U.S. were swamped by increases in the rest of the world, so there was no discernible impact on climate from this, but it had a huge negative economic consequence, both in terms of the regulatory impact of higher energy prices in America and the cost to taxpayers of paying for all that vast new foreign aid. And so this was a horrible deal for the United States, and President Trump correctly identified the reason that the whole rest of the world was so angry about it, about him withdrawing. They were angry because it was a terrible deal for us and a good deal for them, and so they're not going to rip us off anymore. And of course, they were disappointed in that, but we should be very pleased that the president did the right thing.
Is it your organization's position that something does or does not need to be done about climate change, or that this was just not the way to address that issue?
Well, I think it's a tough question, because whether something does or doesn't need to be done presupposes that the what can be done would actually make a difference. And so far, almost all of the policies that have been proposed in the name of global warming have had basically no impact on global temperatures when you run them out through the climate models and so forth. And so, I think that it would be sensible to take actions that would actually reduce global average temperature and minimize some of the risks that are associated with global warming. But it's got to be policies that actually would have that impact and that don't have costs that exceed the benefits. And very few of the policies that have been proposed in the name of global warming meet that test. And this agreement certainly did not meet that test. And this is going to be, I think, a real challenge for President Trump as he says that he wants to negotiate a new agreement that's fair to the United States. I think he's going to see that it's very, very difficult to get every country in the world to get on board with something that would have real impact. And what you end up seeing in most of these international negotiations is every country is fine with stuff that cripples the United States, but they're not fine with imposing real hardships on themselves for perceived benefits potentially hundreds of years in the future. And so I think it's going to be very difficult to come up with something that actually could have that kind of impact. I think the better approach, and the one that we've been very successful with in the United States, is really a technology-driven approach as opposed to a regulatory approach. And the reason greenhouse gas emissions are down significantly in the U.S. is we had the fracking boom, and we had vast increase in natural gas production because of technology, and we've shifted to natural gas.
And I'm sorry to cut you off, Mr. Kirpin. I apologize. We're up against a break. Thank you so much for joining us.
All right, have a good one.
And it's 9 o'clock.